The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we will run through an assortment of roster updates, speculation, and rumors, and we'll also answer a few listener questions. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, and as often from a hotel room, Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. I'm back at the Omni in Corpus Christi, which is a place I've been coming to for 20 years, and a place that I believe has definitely not been remodeled in those 20 years. So it's interesting
they know your
time
name
here.
There?
They might, yes. Yeah, I'm right across the seawall from the Selena statue, which I will make sure and visit tomorrow and pay honor to the Tejano Queen. So we were talking off air about the playoffs. I have watched not a moment of the playoffs this time, I guess in protest of this goofy format. But I think you've seen a little bit of it, and we thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about sort of some highlights from the results from both of us.
Yeah, some wild stuff last night with the referee taking out a Vancouver Whitecaps player as they were approaching what was probably not, but could have been an attempt at the tying goal, and then calling it back, not because of that, but because the player was just slightly offside when LA scored on the counterattack. So that one was kind of wild. I did watch all of both games in the Kansas City St. Louis series, and I mean, it was Kansas City. It was just a lot of fun to watch in both of these games. And so that part was fun. I can't say I didn't enjoy watching Jared Stroud be just very mediocre in both of these games after the whole Kip Keller saga. And then another thing I wanted to mention, and I was scrambling to look up these stats to make sure I had them right, but I also am a little bit pleased to see St. Louis get knocked out for the fact that, like, all the crap that MLS pundits gave Austin last year for being lucky and overachieving and performing at an unsustainable level, the main stat that they were looking at here was goals minus expected goals. Austin's number last season was 13.1. St. Louis is 16.4 this season. And nobody said a damn thing about it. And it pisses me off. And today, Matt Doyle posted a tweet talking about how, like, regression to the mean, blah, 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 blah. And again, I'll defend St. Louis here and say he used it to say we all knew St. Louis would regress to the mean. It just depended on if it was going to happen in this game or next season. And just like the statistical misunderstanding happening here
of what that means.
But also, I think regression to the mean, again, okay, math folks, stats folks, let me know if I'm understanding this wrong. Would regressing to the mean not look like Austin having the same number of expected goals and scoring closer to that number?
Right. Yeah, that would seem to be a similar that would seem to be what it means to me. Yes.
Austin had fewer expected goals and still overachieved those expected goals by, I think it was only 6 or 7 this year, but it's not like, it's the team was just worse this year. It does not mean last year's team was bad and lucky. It's a different team under different circumstances performing differently. And the whole regression to the mean thing, just it's so lazy to me. It's lazy.
Oh man, and you reminded me when you mentioned your Jared Stroud thing. I'm not going to say who I watched the Cowboys game on Sunday with on the air, but there might have been some like hate DMs to Jared Stroud that went on. They know who they are. That went to him as soon as that game was over, because there's a lot of pent up frustration about that guy. And
I don't condone hateful DMs, but I am fine with hateful watching in silence.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's jump into some it's kind of a grab bag of roster updates. Some confirmed, some mostly confirmed, some maybe less confirmed than we thought they were. Let's start off with the first one. We talked about the news that we broke last week about the Nick Lima trade. His wife Ashley mentioned in a sponsored Instagram post that they were moving. So that part 100% confirmed. I think 1 or 2 days after that, she then starts asking for hair and nail salon recommendations in San Jose. And I think that got some people thinking like maybe the destination was wrong. Maybe they're going to San Jose. I mean, Jeremiah, I guess you're the one who provided that half of the information. Do you think that it's possible that he's going to San Jose instead, or is this more of a thing that's where he's from, and so they're going to go spend some time there before moving?
It seems more likely to me that they would be going home to spend time. Maybe she's got a wedding to go to or something. I don't know, before moving. Like, I don't know. It just seems strange that he would come from San Jose to Austin and then get traded back, sort of given the circumstances. Like, I still feel, I mean, I'm not 100% sure that New England's the destination, but I feel like not San Jose still seems like the most likely destination for him.
Yeah, and he is from just up, like,
that's where
less
their home
than an
is,
hour's
right?
drive from San Jose. Yeah, that's where like he went to high school anyway. And so I would imagine he still has a lot of family there. So yeah, it's very possible they are just going to spend some time with family before moving to wherever that final destination is, be it Boston or elsewhere. I think it's also important to remember that we are not going to get an official announcement on this until I think it's December 11th. Is that when the trade window officially opens between MLS clubs? And so, yeah, we're still, it's going to be over a month before before the club is even allowed to announce anything. So who knows if Tom Bogert picks it up or somebody like that picks it up and we get a more official announcement than what we said. But we're not going to get an announcement from the club until almost mid-December.
And then we did get one announcement. We got the dreaded Tuesday news drop on the day that last week's episode came out. We got the news that that had been rumored that Ethan Finlay was getting a contract extension. This is a 1-year guaranteed deal with a club option for the second year, if I remember right. Yeah, club
That's
option
correct.
for the second year.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I think again we said quite a bit about this one on the show last week, but this seems like a good deal. Regardless of, I know they're not giving him a huge raise, and so if I think like the lower the number goes, the happier I'll be about it. But I don't think I'm going to see a number that's going to make me upset about this deal.
Yep, and I do love that we got the 3 career U.S. national team appearances in the press release, because just the Ethan Finlay national team player narrative like delights me.
I wonder if they'll add those into Nick Lima's profile.
Nick Lima's
the next team that he's at, if they throw in his national team appearances.
Maybe so.
We've gotten, so I kind of referenced before, not so official announcements, but we've got some Instagram posts confirming some exits. So Maxi Ruti made a post on his Instagram saying something about his last Halloween in Austin or something like that. And then Sufjan Jafal also gave like a little goodbye tweet. So those two, no surprises, right? We were expecting them to be gone. This is just slightly more confirmation that's actually happening. Valentin Noel on his Instagram made a birthday post to his Austin FC 2 teammate, Chris Pinkham, saying happy birthday. And then in smaller letters saying, I'll miss you. You could read this 2 ways. One of them is leaving. I hope. No offense to Chris Pinkham. Seems like a lovely man. I hope it's Chris Pinkham that's leaving, not Valentin Noel. I looked it up, and Austin do have options on Val's contract. And so if he is going to play for an MLS Next Pro team, and I couldn't find confirmation on this afternoon, but I'm pretty sure if he wants to play for any MLS organization, that some type of transfer or trade or some type of resources will have to change hands for him to play with another MLS team. So if Noel is leaving, it's potentially like him leaving the country or something like that. Seems like a guy that's fairly settled in the US. I don't think, like, that doesn't mean he won't leave in the future or something else will happen, but it seems to me like the very most likely thing happening here is Chris Pinkham is not getting renewed. He's 24 years old, a guy that barely played any minutes. That seems like the kind of guy you're not going to bring back on an MLS Next Pro team.
Yeah, I guess one thing on the guys out that is always going to happen. It's interesting is there's just this everybody wants to make a bunch of wholesale changes until it comes to a guy that they like, right? So I saw some like, oh no, but not Nick Lima, and it even like there's some people who are like Maxi Arruti fans, which I don't really understand, but it's just kind of entertaining to watch people react to these moves. And I think a lot of it is just the affinity that we have for this group of players, especially the ones that have been around for a while. And what Austin's down at can't have more than like 7 or 8 players left from the original roster at this point, I think. So I think people are like emotionally attached to these guys in a way that maybe doesn't make sense logically.
Yeah, I think
me being one of those people sometimes. Sorry, not that I'm not.
I think some people's fandom appreciate the vibes so much of certain players that they're willing to look past the fact that he only scored 1 goal this season. We have not gotten any official roster move announcements, and kind of wanted to check in there. Like, should we be panicking about this? Is this normal? Some of the reasons why this could be happening. This is 100% speculation here, but are they still negotiating some contracts? And if they are, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Are there some roster decisions that they think fans will be upset about? And so they're going to try to wait until a moment when folks aren't paying as much attention and try to bury it under some other news, or like release it the week of Thanksgiving or something like that. I think one of the darker timelines is Danny Pereira posted a kind of cryptic message on his Instagram recently, saying something about like people value, like how much people value doesn't change what you're worth. I don't know, something like that. And so I think you could read that a few ways. Like, you could read it as he's negotiating for a new contract and the club isn't giving him the value that he thinks he deserves. It could also be about like a girl or something.
I was going to say, yeah, you could also read it as him being like kind of a young guy that's maybe a little bit of a loose cannon, has got something going on in his love life, I think. For sure.
It does make me nervous that like this option year that we hope exists, like maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't want to consider that one too much. I guess one of the other things that they haven't done that some other teams have done is officially announce parting ways with anybody. Maybe it's because they don't have anybody super high profile like that. But like the Galaxy talked about Chicharito. I think Colorado announced a couple relatively high profile players who were departing, like without giving the whole list. So
yeah, I think there's fewer Austin guys who would be a headline, right?
Yeah,
in this group that's outgoing or potentially outgoing. But yeah, I think it's important to look at like the reason why maybe we shouldn't panic. I think there's still only 4 teams that have made roster decision announcements, and that's out of what we were counting up before. If we take the teams who are still in the playoffs as of the beginning of this weekend, I think there are 13 teams who are no longer in the playoffs, and only 4 of them have announced anything yet. So it's still fewer than half of them. And so we're still not on the late end of this. But I'm getting tired of waiting.
That's what it comes down to for everybody, right? I think with the season, and especially, not getting the results that everybody hoped for, everybody's looking to turn the page and sort of figure out what the canvas looks like for next season. So the first big set of announcements is going to be who's coming back and who's not, which I think everybody's ready for. And we had some rumor, last week maybe, that they were sort of expecting it to come out relatively soon, and we haven't seen it.
I'm pretty sure Josh Wolf said in one of his last press availability.
Oh, in the postseason press conference,
that he was like, "We'll start hearing stuff soon." And that didn't happen yet.
He's got a different definition of soon than we do, I guess. Wolf time is different than human time. Yeah, and then one of the other things that we covered in this segment that also has come up a lot just in conversations is how much news and speculation comes out of Instagram posts and I guess mostly Instagram posts. I was going to say in tweets, but I don't see that much of it. And I don't feel like in any other sport that you see that. Like I follow a lot of athletes on the teams that I care about, and I don't like over analyze every single thing that they're posting about when it comes to like, is this about their contract or is this about a girl or whatever. And I just think it's an interesting thing about this league. And I know a lot of people do that. And I know a lot of Austin fans follow players really closely and message back and forth with them and stuff like that. And I think it's an interesting phenomenon. And I was curious about like, why do you think it's this way?
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with like the relative fame level of players in MLS and them like not being used to people paying attention half the time. Like because of that, I think players like don't have the same social media training or like the fear of letting something slip on social media, and they feel like, and outside of social media too, right? Just like talking to people around town and like things like that. Like I think people are just like less careful about it because they don't expect anybody to care, or if they do care, like who are they going to tell?
Right. Well, and yeah, that's true for sure. And part of that's the connection, and the fact that, I mean, we joke about, like I was telling you about, like seeing Julio Cascantes drop his kid off at like daycare. It's like, oh, pro athletes are just like us, but like Major League Soccer players in a lot of ways are a lot more like your average person than your NBA player or NFL player or Major League Baseball player, just because of the money, because of the
like
fact that they move around so much.
Every NBA player like that is on like an NBA roster, is it safe to say that all of them are millionaires?
They should be. I mean, they've almost all made enough money. I don't know what the minimum salary is, but it's multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. And
yeah, so like they're all making way more money than like most MLS guys. And so, I mean, a prime example of this, Hernan was posting screenshots of Nick Lima selling exercise equipment on Facebook Marketplace. And so like under his own name. And that's the thing, like imagine an NFL player doing that, or imagine an NBA player doing that. And it's like, I think it just goes back to like not expecting people to know who they are, or if they do, to not care that much.
Yeah, the average in the NBA minimum salary is $1.1 million. So you're right. Anybody that's on a full NBA contract is making more than almost everybody in Major League Soccer, which is probably a lot of it. And there's just the connection part too. I think we probably care more than anybody about these guys, just because of that. Also, just because of the community. And I've never had that. I've never been this close to a team or cared this much about one. So that's another reason why I think people probably follow more closely than they might otherwise.
I think we want to talk about some high-profile free agents that may or may not be available, and then also talk about Denny Pereira going on a podcast this last week and some takeaways from that. First, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them the experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. In 2022, Americans paid almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials pay an average of $336 per year in bank fees, which works out to 6 Austin FC game tickets per person per year. That does not include the SeatGeek fees, as we were talking about off air, which are kind of annoying. You'll pay none of those.
Amplify membership.
SeatGeek fees are kind of like bank fees. You will pay none of those with the Amplify Credit Union.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower.
Our premier sponsor, McGuire Woods Consulting, helps companies and nonprofits navigate the political process at the Texas Capitol and also at the city and national level through lobbying, communication strategies, and general advocacy.
With offices across the country and in 10 MLS cities, including Austin, Houston, and Dallas, McGuire Woods Consulting is solidly verde and black. Learn more about our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com. All right, we are back. We're going to start out talking about Danny Pereira. He went on a podcast called Estamos Ready, which is hosted by a couple of Venezuelan sports personalities, Carlos Mauricio and Gravis Vasquez. And it's a good little interview. I think it was in audio and video form, and I watched the video on YouTube.
So Estamos Ready, is this bilingual or?
It was all in Spanish.
All in Spanish. Okay, that's just an interesting title.
I wasn't familiar with the guys. Carlos Mauricio, I think he does Spanish language stuff. It looks like he covers mostly baseball. And then Gravis Vasquez is a former NBA player. But they one of the things they talked about is Gravis played, is from Venezuela, left the country, came to the US, played college ball, and ended up making it to the NBA for a couple of seasons. And so they were kind of comparing stories with him and Danny about leaving Venezuela when he was young and trying to find his way through college and not really. Danny didn't speak English when he moved over here in high school, right? And so he kind of shared some stories about that, how similar their paths were. But two of the most interesting takeaways that I got from it were, number one, they were asking him about his time with the national team, and Danny goes on to talk about how it's been kind of complicated by his visa status. So his passport is apparently expired. He's dealing with that and working on getting a O1 extraordinary ability visa, which is, I believe that's the one that most athletes get whenever they come to the US. And he was saying that he hopes to have it by February or March, which would mean then he would be able to play more with the Venezuela national team. As of right now, you can only play with them when they come to the US, essentially. And that would allow him to then travel wherever they are playing and get more call-ups from them. So that's exciting. What he didn't say,
give more exposure, right, to everybody else.
And I think that's the thing we just need to be ready for. It's sad to think about, but it would also likely make it easier for him to leave Austin FC. Hopefully when he does that, it's for a boatload of money and we can all send him off with love and good memories. But this probably does make that easier for him. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is Carlos was asking him about the position that he's played, how he's played more attacking roles his whole life when he was younger and in college, but moved to defensive midfield with Austin. So the way that he sets it up is he's kind of giving Danny the opportunity to say, yeah, it sucks. The coach moved me there and I hate it, but it is what it is. And he starts by saying yeah, Josh, whenever I got here, he told me we kind of want to do this for move you into this position a little bit more deeper in the field. And when he was talking about that, Danny goes on to say, I have more control of the ball than vision to score goals. I don't have that spark to score goals. Every once in a while, sure, but not enough to play in a game as a 10. So I ended up as a 6. And then he kind of continued about what that progression was like and how difficult it was, and that he had to do a lot of studying, learn a lot, and just get physically stronger. But then he ended it, and I left this part in Spanish. I didn't translate this bit. And Jeremiah, with your Duolingo, would you like to read how he ended his statement talking about his new position?
Well, he says now he loves it. Ahora me encanta.
That's right. Which I don't know. I found that a little surprising. What's your take on that?
Well, one, it's really cool to hear him talk about it, because we don't hear a lot of commentary out of Danny like this. And I'm a little, I don't know. That's great. I'd say it's good. I'm a little bit surprised, given what a lot of Austin fans and maybe we think about where he should play or be or do, and maybe how he's not, this stereotypical number 6 defensive midfielder. And he doesn't play that, way now too. To hear that he loves it, I think is great. It maybe speaks to him maturing as a player in person more than anything.
Yeah, and I think I think it's still a valid argument to say that that's not his best position. As we've talked about many times, I don't honestly know what his best position is, but I think it's a fair and like valid argument to say it's not the 6. But it does dispel some of the fan fiction that he's being held hostage there against his will, and that he wishes he could play further forward. It seems like he's relatively happy there and is kind of enjoying learning the new position.
Well, I feel like it also shows these guys are realists in a way that we maybe don't always appreciate. Because like when we had the conversation with Jon Gallagher about where he wanted to be, he was like, well, I want to play a long time and like make a difference. And so I'm a fullback, right? Regardless of like what he wanted, where he wanted to play or do growing up. And I feel like maybe this is a little bit of this from Danny too. It's like he understands like this is a place that he can excel at, maybe long term. And so he's going to go with it.
All right, let's move on to talk about a couple of high profile MLS players who are no longer attached to a club. One of them is Javier Hernandez, better known as Chicharito. He is 35 years old. He made $7.4 million guaranteed in 2023. The LA Galaxy announced that he will not be coming back. I think he was on an option year this year, and they announced that they're not going to pick up his option. He only scored 1 goal and had 1 assist in 9 games before tearing his ACL early this year. But the 2 years before that, I know he had I think he came in the second half of his first year and didn't do so hot, but then scored 17 goals and 18 goals in the next 2 seasons, respectively. And then it's had some injury issues since then. The other is Josef Martinez, 30 years old, made $4.4 million guaranteed in 2023. He's had some decent years recently, but he hasn't been that Josef. Was it 2019 when he just
yes,
or 2027? I don't know, whatever.
It was earlier
2017,
than that,
2018, around there, whatever year that was, when he's just destroying the league for a couple of seasons. Like, we haven't seen that guy in a long time. He's not really been able to stay healthy, and when he has been healthy, he hasn't looked like the same guy. And so my question is, like, would you be willing to take either of these guys onto this Austin FC roster? And at what price would you be willing to do that?
And I guess our number one assumption is Austin has some amount of money in order to be able to sign these guys. Cause like Austin FC is constructed right now. Like there's no, even options.
Let's assume, we can't,
let's assume Austin can get there. Austin can clear some amount of space, right?
Let's say they can make room and they have this opportunity. Should they do it? And what's your like upper limit?
I'm done with these guys. I'm done, like this profile of player specifically, and maybe like being excited about Giassi and thinking he would have a bounce back season this year, and him not having that has me like jaded a little bit from it. But old expensive attacking players Austin seems to have had an abundance of, and it does not seem to have worked out. And I would rather spend the money somewhere else, which I think maybe gets back to something I've been thinking about. Like, a lot of times people want to talk about who's Austin bringing in, or like what players should they target. And those were some of the questions maybe we even got like on the Patreon. But like, for me, it's going to be guys we've never heard of, who are younger players from somewhere else. And I can't even speculate on the whole world, but I can't think of a really good situation where like signing a guy that was a big name came in and really made a difference for a club in a positive way. Other than being like, obviously Messi worked out for Miami in terms of brand exposure, or if you're LA and you've got an unlimited amount of money, you can afford to do that. But just your average team, like, I don't think that kind of deal makes sense.
Yeah, I am less averse to players over 30 than I think some Austin FC fans are. But in certain circumstances, if we had a couple of like young promising guys and we're filling out the second or third striker position with an older player to come in and just play some spot minutes, and we could get them for a reasonable number where they weren't going to take up a DP spot, whatever, I'd be like, yeah, like if Chicharito feels like it looks like he's going to come back from this injury and like have another year in him and do it for a relatively cheap price. I mean, just for like the kind of like the marketing and excitement around the fan base to have a guy like him in the team, that would be huge. And then also, like, again, he scored 18 goals last season. And so if he can come back from that injury, there's still value there. But if you're already a team, as you said, like we've got several older guys who have revealed themselves as a little bit injury prone, maybe guys you can't rely on to go every game. Bringing in another one of those guys makes me extremely nervous. And so, yeah, I would not bring in either of these guys. And when you talk about Josef Martinez, you also bring in some locker room baggage and a guy who in the past, when he's not been happy with all of the circumstances, he's seemed to be like a pretty difficult person.
Yes, for sure. And then we also got the Lewandowski's out. So we'll now get every 30-something European player is going to be connected to Major League Soccer in some way, and people are going to wonder about whether they should end up in Austin or not. And I think you have a fairly strong opinion on how valid, how much stock people should put in any of this speculation or discussion.
I guess the way that I said it off air, I would like to clarify now for the listeners, but like for any big European stars, the younger their age is, the less credence you should give to any rumors they're going to come here. Because you see it with guys who are like Griezmann has been linked with MLS for like 5 years now, and what is he's still only like 31 or something, I think. But I mean, yeah, Lewandowski is a guy like I don't think he'll come now, but it's possible that he could come to an MLS team. But the part I think is funniest is like whenever some generic anonymous MLS transfer account says this guy's linked with MLS clubs, like every MLS fan base starts getting excited, like maybe it's going to be us, maybe it's going to be us. And the reality is like a lot of these guys at this point in MLS's growth are only going to go to a handful of markets. And that's just the reality still.
Yeah. And that's probably already, by the time that rumor gets out there, they know like which of the 2 or 3 or 4 places they're interested in too. Although this one's, there's a lot of rumors about Chicago, which would be an interesting pairing with Shaqiri, like given disappointing European players, but also one that maybe makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that happening. But like Austin, I know we all love Austin, and Austin has a reputation within the US now, but among global, I was going to say soccer players, but global people in general, most people in other countries have never heard of Austin. And like you could look it up and like say like, oh, okay, that actually looks like a cool place. And you can talk to people and say like, yeah, that maybe that would be a good place to live, but it's still not Los Angeles. It's still not and regardless
New York,
of what you think of Miami, like when I lived in Spain, that was one of the places that people had either been or said they wanted to go, was Miami. Like Miami has a much bigger reputation outside of the US than it does within the US. And so I think there's just like some cities, some markets have the cachet of what these players think they're getting into. And then also just like some of the markets actually do have these things. LA is a place where you can go and like live in amazing weather year round and kind of live like a superstar. And there's like an infrastructure there to live comfortably as a superstar, right? And
it's all those places it's easy to get to the rest of the world from those places
right.
too, which is to be, not that Austin and Dallas and Kansas City and Minnesota aren't beautiful places, but it's also like, it's like if you're international, the travel becomes a burden in a way that it isn't, and you're in a coastal city.
Yeah. And I think eventually MLS could and probably will get to a point where like the best NBA players will go wherever somebody's going to pay them, right? Like the best NFL players will move to cities that they maybe don't care about or don't even like, but it's the team is good and they're going to pay me a lot. And so I'll go there. And I think MLS will get there, but it's not there yet. I think high profile international players are going to be very picky about what markets they move into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take another quick break and then we'll come back and we're going to answer some listener questions.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Covert Ford. The Coverts have been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
In addition to supporting car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community and the official automotive partner of Austin FC.
This week, we're going to talk to you about a 2023 Ford Mach-E on a 36-month lease. You can get it for $499 a month with $39.24 down with first payment. This is stock number 223-2485. The MSRP is $45,295, but with dealer discounts and rebates, again, you can get it for $499 a month with $39.24 down. See the website for details.
If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertford.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we are back. We had Adrian Healy and Michael LaHood on a couple of weeks ago and had them help us answer listener questions. And we had so much fun and spending time with them that we were not able to get to all the questions. So we're going to go through and try to get through a few more of those today. So let's start off with one by Robert Miller. This one, there's a few questions in this question. So Jeremiah, do you want to
let's paraphrase. Yeah, let's paraphrase a little bit. And we will be answering these as ourselves and not as Adrian and Mike too, by the way, just because a couple of them we had to leave out. We're like specific to them. So the first one here is we've got the Diego Fagundes trade. We don't know exactly how much Austin got out of it, but a significant amount of GAMTAM for 2024. Do we see Austin using that money to pay down Ring's salary to buy another DP? That's the first part of the question.
I think we can answer this one. It's going to depend, right? Because at the moment, we
Alex
cannot sign
roster?
another. Well, I mean, Alex Ring's still on the roster,
true, yeah.
but he's not the biggest impediment to this. If Rodney Redis has another contract here and we keep him, him and John Kolmanich give us too many U22 initiative players to have another full DP. And so a few things have to happen. Like one of those guys needs to go. Musa Jite needs to stay on loan. And if we're left with just one of those three U22 initiative players, then we could buy down Alex Ring and get a full DP, but not maxed him at 1.7 million or whatever. It could be as much money as we want to pay him. We could get that full third DP. As it stands now, Alex Ring has to be that guy. And we could buy him down if we wanted to, but it would just be to bring in another maxed
Alex
player.
Ring.
So
yeah.
It would be 1-for-1 essentially and wouldn't really help us that much.
Right. And this next one is we've talked about the midfield a fair amount, and kind of in the real world, what the Austin midfield looks like and what the options are. If it was up to you, would you play like a more defensive midfield, a more offensive midfield? Like who are your players that you would slot into the midfield?
Yeah, I mean, with the guys we have, and we've talked about this on the show, like I don't see an obvious answer or like a clear answer to fit all of our best midfielders on the field at the same time. And not even best, the ones that fit together best. And we talked about whenever Adrian and Michael were on, how in that box midfield that Austin been playing for a lot of the season, where you have 2 6s and 2 10s, essentially, there's no 8s there. And I think Danny's best spot is probably as like a double pivot with a more defensive guy playing next to / behind him. In that system, he has to be one of the deeper guys, essentially. And so like what we have now, it's Ring, Valencia, Pereira. And I've said, like, I think Valencia fits better in a true double pivot to sit deeper. And so I think maybe what I would do is in kind of a rotation of those 4 guys, the 2 deeper 6s, the 2 forward 10s, you can play Ring at either of them. And so maybe if it's a game where we think we're going to have more of the ball, we're more confident in being able to play with the ball a bit more, you could play Ring a bit further forward next to Driussi, play Danny as one of the deeper guys. If it's a game where we're going to be against it a little bit more and need to be more defensively solid, maybe you bench Danny, which sounds crazy, but like play Ring and Valencia deeper Danny sits and comes on late, and then because like I don't think he can play in one of those attacking ones. But would you change the shape entirely? Let's say like we're not beholden to that shape.
Yeah, that's I think the more question to me, like because they can definitely see a spot where if you have, I mean, it comes down to what you can do with Alex Ring, but like Valencia is sitting deep by himself all the time, Danny ahead of him in the 8, which is probably his best position, and then some combination of Ring.
But then where you put Driussi,
you got to put Driussi up front.
That means putting Driussi as kind of a weird like inverted winger kind of thing, or as the striker, and so it gets hard to fit all the puzzle pieces together there.
I noticed you did not talk about Owen Wolff among the puzzle pieces too, but
I still see Owen as like rotate him in.
Yeah, he's the fourth of those guys. I guess that's the other. We can agree this is maybe the one position where Austin doesn't need extra depth too. Like the one spot Austin's solid right now.
The fact that Johan Valencia looked decent at the end of the season, and like we're expecting Owen Wolff to just continue to get better. Like these are good problems. If you can't get all your good players in the field, that's a good problem to have. And so maybe it's fine if we're like sitting one of them on the bench all the time. Kellen Acosta doesn't start most games for LAFC because their midfield is just too good for him to be in there, which is crazy. He's a really good midfielder. And so if we can get to somewhere even close to that level, maybe that's fine. And some guys start some games, they don't start the other games, and that's just how it is. But I do think so. Let's say if you did do whoever, if you went to more like a traditional 4-2-3-1 and you played Driussi as that 10, he's not like, I know like Adrian and I've heard other people say that they think Driussi's being used out of position. And maybe that's true. I won't argue that now, but I don't think like as a 10, he's not Lucho Acosta. He's not Babelo Reynoso. Like he's a much different player than those guys. And so I still don't think he's the guy that you want to get a million touches and be like pulling every string. He is, as we saw in 2022, like when he scored 20 some odd goals, he was playing a bit further forward and kind of acting as a second striker a lot of the times. What that means is we need another creative player creating chances. We had that in Diego Fagundes in 2022. We didn't have that version of Diego here this season, and now he's not here at all. And so regardless of who's in the game, who's there, we have to find someone else who's going to be able to create chances, because I don't think that's Driussi's game entirely. But B, like in order to get Driussi playing his game, he does need someone else creating chances there. And we just didn't really have that most of the season.
Yeah. And that's going to be really hard to do given what we know Austin's current contract situation and flexibility is. So I feel like this is going to be an ongoing issue into 2024 also. And then this final question is, do you see an Emiliano Rigoni redemption arc?
At the end of 22, I was still hopeful. At the end of 2023, I feel like I know who he is, and this is just what we're going to get.
Yeah, I think he could be a little more productive. I think our expectations are probably a little bit too high. So, the 8 to 10 goal Rigoni, I feel like is the best redemption arc that we're going to get out of him.
Yeah, and I think there is still, maybe if you get that chance creator in this team and they start clicking a bit, I do think he can be a more useful player for sure. I don't think he's ever going to be useful enough for us to all feel good about how much money he's on and how much money they paid to get him here. But I mean, that's water under the bridge at this point, right? If we can just get a decent season out of him at this point, then that's fine. I'll be thrilled with that.
Yeah. And now we're 2 years into this contract thing. Like it's a little less harder to stomach every year because like you're sort of getting toward the end of it where like it's not a big forward going like cost that we have to worry about too. So Trevor Allison, if we clone 10 more of every player in Austin FC and they're on the same pitch as the original and put them all together and gave them time to train together, which players would make the best team. So which of the Austin FC players, if there are 11 of them together, would win a knockout tournament? So this example here is would 11 Danny Pereiras beat 11 Johan Valencias?
I think we've answered a similar question to this in the past, but they didn't phrase it as like a tournament against the other players in their cloned forms. Do you have an answer? Who would you go for?
I may still go for the same answer I had before the last time we did this, which may have been last year, but I feel like 11 Jon Gallaghers are going to have the most flexibility over anybody, although they're probably not going to have a lot of luck on set pieces against 11 of the other people on the team. But I'll still go with that. I feel like Jon's still got like the most versatile skill set on the club and has been an attacker recently enough that a clone Jon Gallagher could remember how to do that. So that will still be my answer.
Yeah, I think there's like risks and rewards regardless of who you choose, right? And Gallagher, I think you have the speed, a little bit of attacking ability, but it might be like, does he have enough attacking ability to beat one of the other teams? And does he have enough defensive ability to deal with 11 Julio Cascantes playing crosses into themselves?
True.
Oh man, the Julio Cascante.
Are you going to talk yourself
Jon
into
Gallaghers.
Julio now?
No, I'm just
Okay.
imagining that specific matchup. That would be fun to watch, I think. I think my answer would have to be, I think Alex Ring would be a decent shout, simply for that fact that I think he would be decent, like a back four of all Alex Rings. It's not the best back line in MLS, but it might be the best back line in an all Austin FC against Austin FC. So, and then he also has some attacking ability, and so could still score some goals probably. My other option, I think, would just be Driussi and just say like, pick the most talented guy, and just he's strong. He's like a decent athlete. He's pretty like sturdily built and strong. So he can hold his own better than some defensively, and then you just expect him to score more goals than everybody else.
And he probably would. I mean, honestly, that's probably the best.
Any other dark horses here?
No, I don't. I can't come up with anybody else. I mean, now that you put the Julios in our heads.
Yeah, I'm going through here. I mean, like Danny Pereira gets torn to shreds defensively, right?
And he can't finish, right? According to his own.
Rigoni is maybe not a terrible shout as far as just because he's like a guy that is an attacking player, but he's of a bigger stature than a lot of the offensive player guys. So maybe he could hold his own defensively, but not my first choice still.
Yeah. All right, let's go to this Taylor Copic question. And this is not something I've experimented with. This could be the second time, I think, week in a row that one of these places has come up. Use Chat GPT plus, what is this? DALL-E? I've never seen it.
DALL-E is like the
DALL-E.
image, like AI image generator.
Which is the one you use to make your hot dog guy.
That's correct. My hot dog wrestling concept.
So if anybody that's been on Twitter, I think, or maybe Instagram and seen that, they will be familiar with it. To share your designs for your ideal new away kit in 2024. So I think you tried that and it did not work very well.
Yeah, I was putting in some prompts. I have a subscription for work now, and so I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that that's what I was using my access to that to do. But I couldn't. I struggled to like get it to give me back what I wanted. But honestly, the no comply like skating shirt, I actually really like that one. And so if that were just the home kit in a couple of years, I would be perfectly happy with that. But aside from that, I mean, I've said this on the show before. I like a simple, more like classic looking kit. And so honestly, like the Sentimiento mint green kit, that might be my favorite Austin FC jersey ever.
And that probably is mine. And that's so just as a reminder, that's the one that's going away. So now we've seen two away kits. One was like plain white, one's plain mint.
I think the plain white was like the boring expansion year kit. It's like you're gonna get one okay one and one boring one.
And then the whole league had that, if I remember that year. Like,
it was a similar template to what everyone was getting. Yeah.
So I like the mint, but I mean, I assume that we were going to get a plain colored kit of some sort as the away kit this year. Like,
what direction would you like them to see them go with that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be sad there's no moon tower on it, because I will miss that one. But I feel like it has to be something simple, especially with this. Apparently, the stripes are going to be the thing that we lean into for the home kit, and like we've got a bunch of them going on right now. Like, I would like to see just a plain, clean, and some shade of green.
Well, is there a shade of green you would want? Would you want them to go like highlighter, or do you want them to stay like a muted thing?
I want to stay pretty clean on that. I feel like that's what you kind of have to do with that kit, because teams get a little showier with their home ones to like not clash against something else. Do you have a different take?
Well, it makes it complicated. I think like a solid bright verde kit would be really cool, but it's difficult to do with like this rotation that we have with only 2 kits. One of them being more like the green is like too dark to be our light color, right? Like the classic bright verde green. And so it can't be that with this rotation we have going. Maybe once we get like a third kit, like an alternate kit, maybe then we could have like a pure bright verde one. But yeah, right now I don't really know. I think like the best we can hope for is if you look at like Philadelphia's like their Simpsons kit with like the yellow clouds all over it, that is light colored, and I think they'll wear that against dark kits sometimes, and so we could maybe still get something interesting but light colored. But yeah, I wouldn't be that upset if it's something simple and as cool looking as the Sentimiento kit. I'm happy with that, and they can like stay clean and classic with the secondary kit, and then have their fun with the primary one, which is the barcode one right now.
We got a Alex Rubio question. I think we touched on it a little bit, but let's just maybe a few weeks ago get back to it. So it's Austin FC and FCito have the same style of play. What makes the second team so successful when compared to the first team?
Yeah, I don't remember what exactly we said when we kind of referenced this before, but it's the quality of the players on the team
compared to the level of play, effectively, right? It's
compared to the level of their competition, right? Yeah, so they're playing a very similar style and just doing it better. And I think it's for several reasons, but the quality being different, and then also just like for that level, our players were better than the players on the other team.
Yeah, and especially defensively, right? Because the Austin FC 2 doesn't score a lot of goals either, just like the first team doesn't score a ton of goals.
And still played
like nobody gets past Damian Loss.
Played pretty risky at times too. And like would throw numbers forward and get guys in there. And we just had players who could do something in transition whenever the other team went the other way.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot more to it than that. Do you want to go to this Brian Mangum question then? That is in recognition of us. I'm going to ask the question, then I'm going to make it 2 questions now. In recognition of us all being asked repeatedly to let Roto cook, please share your favorite go-to dinner recipe. What is the origin of this term? I mean, I see it a lot. I see it a lot in Slack. I see it a lot on social media, but I don't remember where it came from.
It's just something the youths say, is to let X cook, let whoever you're talking about cook, and like it's like let them do their thing. Don't talk about them. Like they know what they're doing. Let them do their thing.
And when I think about somebody like Young and with it and connected to that kind of culture,
you think about
Rodolfo Burrell. No, you, yeah, you and Rodolfo Burrell were the same. Was the first 2 people that came to
mind. But yeah, it's just I think it's just a thing people say, and they're applying it to him in this moment. But back to Brian's question, your favorite go-to dinner recipe, Jeremiah, do you have one?
I do, but it's mostly because I'm very lazy. It's like yeah, basically pasta primavera. So I take all the veggies that are about to go bad in my like vegetable drawer, cut them all up in little pieces, cook them in some olive oil and throw some pasta and some red sauce in there and maybe turkey or something and like make a dish out of whatever I happen to find in the fridge.
That sounds great. I have a version of this that I like to call shrug lunch, because it's often if I'm working from home, Ashley is on phone calls like almost all day, every day, for work. And so oftentimes I'll like throw together a lunch with just like whatever is in the refrigerator. We've got leftovers from 3 different meals and some bread or some pasta. And I just like make something. And then I call it a shrug lunch because I'll walk into her office while she's on a phone call and I sit it down and then I just shrug and walk away.
Okay, here you
go. But my go-to recipe, we'll do just like a simple like beans and rice and fresh greens kind of thing. That's like really fast and relatively healthy. But I also have gotten into doing a salmon dish. We'll get some salmon and I'll mix up soy sauce, sesame oil, and that chili crisp. Have you had any of chili? This chili crisp stuff. It's gotten popular the last couple of years, but it's very good. It's like toasted garlic and seeds and all kinds of like spices all in this like chili oil mixture. And so I'll mix that in, put it on the salmon, put it on some Brussels sprouts or some asparagus or broccoli or something like that, and just throw all that in the oven. And so it's like kind of a nice dinner that only takes a few minutes to make, really.
So Ashley's traveling more now, and these are things you make together. So do you eat differently when she's gone?
Yeah, I try to kind of stick to it, but I also throw in, when I do a grocery run, I'll throw in a frozen pizza and some like frozen microwave lunches just for the days when I don't want to cook anything. But I try to be a good boy and eat well while she's gone.
Well, I like that, man. I try to minimize the use of dishes if I'm on my own. So like anything that can eat over the sink, so I don't have to get a plate dirty. And if it's like in a taco or on a bread, so I don't even have to like, use utensils. That's my dream dish if left to myself. And
yeah,
I'll let the garbage disposal clean it up.
Oh yeah, I like minimal dishes and as few cooking dishes as I can get away with as well.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, well, we'll leave the listeners on that riveting bit of insight there. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on Twitter at LViajero87 and jbentley_ATX, and then at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then sign up for the Patreon. We'd greatly appreciate your support. We need to start thinking about 2024.
We do. So yeah,
rewards.
So if you have a take on something you would like as a 2024 reward, if you're a Patreon subscriber, or maybe like what would convince you to become one in terms of getting some swag, let us know.
We'd like to encourage you to check out Phil West's Substack, verdeallday.substack.com/moontower. He's still putting out stuff pretty regularly, even though it's the off season. So still getting value there. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with whatever Austin FC news happens, or if there's not Austin FC news, we'll come up with something else to talk about. But until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente. Oh my God.